Hello, Steve White, Trek Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, we have had our second episode of the season, out of 6 so far, that actually resembled a Star Trek episode. The group consensus from all the people I've watched doing reviews seemed to be that this was the most Star Trek episode of the season, at least. And I can sort of see that. The second last episode, so we sort of had 2 episodes in a row that felt like Star Trek, except there are a lot of complaints, and I agree with them, that the last episode, the fifth episode, focused too much on the romance and the romantic dramas between some of the characters, which is not really what Star Trek is about. This episode didn't have any of that. There's one glance between Lan and Kirk, and that's it. They didn't have any, characters working through their relationship dramas while they're fixing a warp core or something, so they didn't have any of that. But this episode starts off with Kirk on the Farragut, and he's not impressed with his Vulcan captain, who supposedly is too careful and doesn't take any risks and likes to do things by the book, yet has crazy, very un-Vulcan, illogical hair. But yeah, so they are dealing with a planet. There's problems, and basically there's a planet destroyer of planets like ship that is legend that every sort of one seems to know about somehow, that we sort of hear later in the episode, and it has basically blown up this planet, and the shockwave seriously damages the Farragut. So the Enterprise comes to help, and this ship shows up, and it's kind of like a monster. It's got like a mouth that opens up, and they basically take the Enterprise because the ship is intact and worth something to them, whereas the Farragut isn't. Now, Kirk pushes Scotty, because the interesting sort of thing I guess they're trying to do is they've sort of separated the crews, where all the characters that Kirk will later work with on the Enterprise and become members of the original crew are on the Farragut helping him, and the other crew members that are sort of Pike's new sort of crew members, because none of them are from the Cage, are on the Enterprise, working together to get around being captured by this scavenger ship, which is basically what they're doing. They're like scavenging the Enterprise. So Kirk pushes Scotty to get there fast enough to get ahead of the ship that's gone off after taking the Enterprise, and the warp core fails, and it's all Kirk's fault, and he doesn't sort of know what to do. He's sort of always been sort of pushing for captain and sitting back and criticising his captain, thinking he could do better, and now he's finally caught the car, so to speak. He doesn't know, it wasn't what he sort of was expecting, and he's sort of having trouble with it. And Spock does try and give him the logical, rational sort of version of things that he needs. But there is a really annoying meta joke where Spock is saying, look, you have to do this and this, if not it would, instead of saying it would be not logical, or it wouldn't be logical, or illogical, he says would be not good. And they're just trying to have us go, oh, he didn't say logical, and it's like one of those things that pulls you out. Everyone hated that, so did I. Okay, so they had this idea that if they fabricate this fuel that the scavengers use, that they will come after the Farragut, which they do. And for some reason, detaching their nacelles disables their ship, and no one really seemed to. I couldn't work out why. No one else seemed to be able to work out why. It didn't make any sense. So yeah. And eventually, they end up firing on. They have to sour the milk, so that the ship that's holding onto the Enterprise lets go, and then they can escape. And they blow up the ship, and it's a very traditional sort of Star Trek sort of episode ending like that. And then they find out after that these scavengers were actually humans that had sort of left the Earth a long time ago to avoid the environmental disasters that we're sort of experiencing the beginning of now. Yet for some reason, which this isn't explained, they didn't contact Earth when Earth didn't destroy itself. I mean, they left thinking that they had to escape, like, the Earth's environmental issues, which were resolved, and they never contacted Earth. They were just like out on their own, like some lone pirate ship, just accumulating ships and turning the ship into this giant, massive, cannibalized ships and scavenged ships and parts and things, and it's kind of weird. There are a couple of moments where Pike is sort of saying to Kirk that, we have to look at these people as humans. Empathy isn't conditional. Just because they're, different from us doesn't mean they're monsters, although he, sees the Gorn as only monsters, and hopefully this is an arc and he's going to sort of realise this himself and learn it himself, because he's talking about something that he's actually doing himself. I think that's about it for the morals of the story. It's sort of like, it's weird how they're like, it's somehow worse that they killed 70,000 crew members on this ship that were enemies because they were humans who had run away from Earth, and I don't know, maybe they just thought the Earth had been destroyed or something, but how could you not know that the Earth was still there and the environmental issues have been resolved? There's things that don't quite work, but it's only once you start thinking about it that, like all other Kurtzman Star Trek, little things sort of start to fall apart and unexplained, like the warp nacelles and so forth. But there are a few weird little moments, like they have to use on the Enterprise the phones because the systems aren't working, and Palia's got all these old vintage phones in her quarters along with all these other things, and that was sort of interesting. They didn't take it too far, they didn't make it too camp, so that was interesting. I'm looking at my notes and wondering what have I forgotten. No, not much. I just went really brief on some things that I could have spent more time on. Like Kirk's attitude, we sort of see that he's got the boldness and the brashness of Kirk and the impatience and everything, and telling people what to do and ordering people around without really knowing what he was doing and not really listening to people, and sort of realising that you have to find that balance that Kirk had, where he would sort of listen to everyone but then sort of make his decision and act on it, and it was his decision. But it's sort of not like Burnham, who just saves everyone. And so they're sort of trying to, this felt like a bit of a backdoor pilot for Star Trek Year One, and the idea of just sort of seeing how Kirk gets to, but I'm guessing he'll get to that point, and by the time he steps onto the bridge at the end of Enterprise, of Strange New Worlds, that he's ready for commanding the Enterprise. So the first year, Star Trek Year One, won't be about him working out how to actually command the ship, kind of like the first couple of Star Trek reboot movies were. But I've gone over my 5 minutes. I normally get pretty much to 6 minutes, but yep. I think that's it. He gives a little bit of a speech about, risk is why we're here, which sort of called back to the risk is our business. Yep, I can't read my own notes, so I'm going to leave it there. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of this episode. And it's nice that they've had at least 2 episodes that resemble Star Trek. Even though there were issues, they were people seem to be enjoying them, and it gives us some hope that maybe we'll get a few episodes out of this season and the next season and maybe the final season that actually are decent Star Trek episodes that don't drive us mad. But overall, like I said, it seems to be a bit of a pitch for Year One, but I don't think anyone wants these people to do a reboot of the original Star Trek. Maybe someone else could do it, but we don't really want to see this go into the original series. But I'm going to go.